I guess to kind of start off, if we can jump back to Maurice, you kind of have a thing for these avant-garde sex stories. I know that's a doc, but what are you interested in? It seems like you're into some interesting things. Like, how do you find a story about Maurice? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me about that. That's cool. I haven't gotten to talk about that before. But, I mean, I think one thing that's really great about making movies is you can really be interested in everything, you know, and sort of what you can make a movie about, you know, the limitations are just as far as your own interests go, you know. And so for that, like I made that while I was still in school at Cal Arts. That was my thesis film for Cal Arts. And I had gotten a scholarship to go to France to study in France for 3 months, the last semester that I was at school. And I had actually written a proposal that was kind of this very dry film about this composer who had spent time in Paris, and I was going to be doing a couple, like, you know, talking head interviews, and it was going to be this kind of very like dry movie. And then I got there and I just wasn't feeling it, and I was reading articles about Paris, and I came upon this story about this adult movie theater that still played 35 millimeter film, and this guy that owns it, who's kind of this nutty guy, who is like, and in reading it, I realized this is probably the last place maybe in the world that still plays 35 millimeter film, and you know, primarily. And I just also, you know, I thought to myself, this is a place that might not exist in 5 years. So it was a chance to document something that might not exist. And also, like, you know, obviously sex is a subject that, you know, people respond to whether they admit it or not, and was something that I was always interested in. You know, I've always been interested in filmmaking in general. Like, filmmaking is a process. I read a lot of books about making movies. And I was very lucky because Maurice, the guy that owns the movie theater, turned out to be this kind of crazy character out of itself. And the movie is this, just, you're kind of with him going on, you know, through his day, you know, opening the theater, screening the films, customers coming by, and you hear him sort of talking about what he's doing, and you realize when he's talking about it, he actually is losing money. Like, he is, the reason why this place is afloat is because it is so a part of him that if he lets that go, it's like letting go this part of himself, you know? So I was really, it was also really validating making that, because, you know, it was kind of the first bigger project that I'd ever made. Like, I'd done like small documentaries and art installations and, you know, goofy stuff before that, but it was the first time I'd really like set out to make something. And you know, I had a whole crew of French film students who were all super professional, and it was a really validating experience making that. And that was what I showed Mark Duplass. You know, we were friends at that point, and he was kind of mentoring me coming out of school, and he really liked that film and liked the sensibility, and it was out of him seeing that then led to the conversations that became the movie Creep. Yeah.
Had you had this idea while y'all were doing Creep, or was this right after Creep? I mean, have you kind of always had this? Well,
Creep was a really long process making that movie.
2 years, right?
Yeah, we had, yeah, and then that first year we had essentially, we thought, finished the movie. And it was called Peach Fuzz at the time, and it was kind of a more black comedy than it was a horror movie, and so, but it was still a found footage film, you know, and that was only because we wanted to make a movie without a crew, you know. It was kind of a weird experiment going out to make this movie with just me, who I don't act, but I did in this movie, and Mark, and a video camera. Those were our elements, and then a 10-page outline as well. And then we showed what we had cut together to Jason Blum from Blumhouse, you know, the guys that do like Paranormal Activity and stuff, and Insidious, and he loved it and said, guys, if you make this more of a horror movie, if you go back and do reshoots and actually like kind of form this more into a horror film, I'll help you put it out. And so we spent a year and maybe probably doing 5 or 6 reshoots where we would test the film, dial in moments that we could sort of make scarier or more intense, and go back and reshoot those moments. So it was a real like organic, piecemeal way of making the movie, you know. And it was once we got to the end of that process that I started writing the overnight, and that was essentially Mark saying, you know, if you want to make a movie using my sort of small, low budget production model, go ahead and write something, and I'll produce it for you. And so I went, you know, we sort of came up with the initial idea of the movie together, having these two couples meet up, having one of the couples be a transplant to Los Angeles, you know, and then sort of thinking about these heightened characters for Jason Schwartzman and Judith Godrich's parts in the movie. And then I went off and wrote the script and brought it back to him. And then we shot it in April of last year.
So I'm curious then, when does it is okay, the penis thing I'm sure is there, but when does like the butthole get involved?
The
like,
butthole,
that's to me the most shocking part of the movie.
Thank you, I guess. That was in the script. That was something I came to in the script, and just, you know, I thought it would be interesting to, I thought it was funny, and then I thought it was an interesting way to kind of have this character be expressing his subconscious mind, you know, and hopefully it'd be something where, you know, and that I love the way that scene works, because it really, I feel, is inclusive to the audience, where you watch that moment in the movie and you can kind of hear, when you watch it in a movie theater, you can hear people start to realize what the paintings are even before Jason talks about it. And then once Jason talks about it, it's like, you know, there's laughter, and it's kind of this validating thing, you know. And that's the way a lot of the humor works in the movie. It kind of works as this like, it exists in how you're discovering the characters, you know, and how hopefully it's subverting whatever expectations you're having with the movie. Like, once, I feel like there's a lot of times where you think, oh, this is going to happen, or, oh, this is what these people are all about. And then it sort of shifts that a little, or tries to shift that a little bit.
So what's easier, getting someone to paint those or getting someone to wear a prosthetic penis?
Both of them in this case. Everyone was, that's the other thing, is that, like, you know, even though there's like kind of all this ridiculous stuff going on, everyone that worked on the movie is incredibly professional and, you know, takes their job seriously. And even though I'm giving them maybe the most ridiculous job they can possibly have, they're doing it, you know, in an amazing professional way. Like, those paintings were all painted the night before we had to shoot that scene. There's
like 20, 30 of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And our production designer, Teresa Gulasarian, God bless her soul, she had hired someone to paint them. They fell through, and she ended up staying up all night long painting the paintings. And they're amazing.
They're so amazing. There's such a variety. What is y'all's like internet searches like? If you have a computer, it must be kind of weird.
Yeah, no, don't Google the word butthole. We learned that. That was actually, Teresa texted that to me when she was first doing research. And then, yeah, that was actually my first like professional interaction with our producer, Naomi Scott, Mark Duplass, and then Adam Scott and I were just the four of us emailing penis pictures to each other while we were trying to decide on the prosthetics, what exact size we were going to go for, what we were going to be sending to the makeup artists or the FX guys who were going to be actually crafting them for us.
So what made you decide on those two?
They both.
What?
You mean size-wise?
Yeah. How did you decide that?
Well, I knew I wanted there to be a difference between the two of them that was, you know, that you could see for sure. But and for the small one, we didn't want Adam to like have a medical condition or anything, but we wanted it to be small enough that it could be, you know, it could seem like that's, you know, that could be something that someone would be insecure about, but it's also not that small. It's fine. It's, you know,
it's workable.
It's workable. It's what you do with it that matters.
I guess final question, Patrick. Both these films are kind of coming out at the same time, if not, yeah. Yeah,
the overnight it's coming out wide this weekend on the 26th today, and then the Creep came out on Tuesday on iTunes. So yeah, they both came out essentially the same weekend.
That's not normal.
No,
at all.
It isn't. No, and this was not the plan. You know, Creep probably could have come out, you know, maybe 6 months ago, but I'm grateful that it happened this way. You know, I think it's exciting because the films both kind of exist in different genres. They're not really in competition with each other, and hopefully if you watch one, there'll be enough elements in the other, and enjoy it, there'll be enough elements in the other one that you'll hopefully respond to. So it's exciting. I'm glad, because this is the last 4 or 5 years of my life kind of getting thrown out in the world at the same time. So I'm just excited to keep making stuff. That's the plan. And you know, my life for the last 6 months, especially since Sundance and especially since this movie came out, has just been, you know, putting this film out in the world. And so I'm excited to have it actually get out there and have people respond to it.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. It was a pleasure watching it. The whole press area was cracking up hilarious.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, good. Yeah.